Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Sends and Suffers podcast. I am your host, Mario Stanley, and I am so excited that you are here, back again, downloading the episode, taking a listen, and making all this work that me and the team put into this worthwhile. Thank you, and you're rad. And if you guys haven't already, please join our sticker club. For a simple thing of $5 a month, which is virtually buying me a beer and just hanging out, you get stickers and cool things in the mail. Sometimes a little love letter, sometimes it's just the stickers, sometimes it's a sneak peek of what's coming up. But if you haven't already, go to sendsandsuffers.com and join now. I'm looking forward to sending you some stickers and some love letters. Next up, I'm so excited to announce this partnership. Gym Climber Magazine and Sends and Suffers podcast. How rad is this? Because I was inspired and I was motivated by climbing magazines to go outside. I mean, those are the things that really allowed me to go down the rabbit hole, reading these stories, these articles that just inspire me to go to these wild places. I also got training tips. I also got information about local climbing gyms. I mean, it is a wealth of information. And I know you can go on the internet. I know you can Google it, but honestly, the best source of curated information that's going to give you the most reliable content is in these magazines. So if you guys do not subscribe to Gym Climber Magazine, please go on their website, check them out on the gram, check out all their things because they are promoting us on all their platforms. And I want you guys to be just as inspired as I am and was by those old magazines that I still have on my bookshelf today. Now, I know not everyone who listens to this is a climber, but if you are thinking about getting into climbing or you're a seasoned climber, there are 3 companies here that I'm about to mention that are going to be a game changer. First and foremost, Tension Climbing. Please go to sendsandsuffers.com. Their link is on our website. Anything you buy from their shop will support this podcast. Now, what are they? They are the one-stop shop to making you stronger and better in all the things that we don't like to do. Hangboarding, finger training, grip training, you name it. They have all the tools and they've got some great tips on their site. So if you haven't already, please check them out. And if you're looking maybe even to add some tools in your house, you should check out their training board. They've got an amazing one. I personally love climbing on it. I love climbing on wooden holds. It saves my skin for the crag. This next thing might seem like a little detail, but we all know it's the little things that make the big gains in life. And having good gear, chalk bucket, chalk bag, crash pad, when you go outside and when you're training indoors, you want to be prepped. I talk about this in my 7 Ascendments, and what I want to give a big shout out to is organic climbing. I'm super excited to be on their climbing team, but most importantly, I believe in their product. And I love that you can customize their stuff. Like, how many of us have gone outside and had the exact same crash pad or the exact same chalk bag as everyone else? Make your stuff as unique as you are. Check them out, Organic Climbing. Let them know that you came here because of Sends and Suffers podcast, and they'll take care of you. Last, but by no means the least, and this, honestly, your boy has had some chagrining moments in realization in his climbing. I am so excited to be part of the Kaya Collective, and I have been using Kaya for quite a while now. I hope you guys all find me on there. My name is Black Thunder. Black_Thunder. Check a brother out. But I love their app because I can track my progress. And I don't know about you, but in my time climbing, I journal all my outdoor climbs. You check me out on Mountain Project, I got a ton of them on there. But I just keeping track of all of this stuff. It's always made me a better climber. And I admit in my later years, I've gotten a little lazy. But with Kaya, I've been able to get that data. And we all know data is king. Data is key nowadays. Whatever. The internet sells your data and makes a fortune off of it. So why don't you collect the data on your climbing and realize the gold mine that's in front of you? And I have had to come to realize that I need to step my game up because I'm looking at the things. And y'all can go there, check me out. Y'all see exactly what I'm talking about. But if you're not on Kaya, it's at most gyms. It's at most things outdoors. You can find any climb, but post it, share it, let me see it. But most importantly, track your own progress so you can see your gains. These are the 3 fundamental tools that you are going to need in order to be successful at climbing, whether you're new or a seasoned climber. These tools will help you succeed. All right, let's get into the episode. All right, Len, welcome to Sends and Suffers podcast. I am super excited to have you as a guest on the show. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Can you just tell the audience, because I'm assuming some people know who you are and some people don't, who are you, where are you from, and what is your connection to the outdoors?
Yeah, my name's Len Necefer. I wear a lot of different hats, but I'm actually just transitioning out of being a professor, and I'm going to be doing outdoor stuff more full time with my company, Natives Outdoors. But I'm originally from the Navajo Nation in northeastern Arizona. I grew up in a few places, Lawrence, Kansas, and a place called Saley, Arizona. I live in Tucson now, but yeah, I'm like a big skier, climber, do the outdoor things. But yeah, I'm super psyched to be here and chat with you and finally link this up after a year of crazy COVID stuff.
Yeah. I was about to say, we've been going back and forth for at least I want to say 4 or 5 months with COVID and everything. So I'm psyched that you're here. I saw you made that post on the gram. So what was your decision to leave? Why did you leave academia?
Yeah, actually, let's take a step back and like how I got a degree. So, I mean, why I'm in this position. I said, I mentioned grew up on the Navajo Nation, but I kind of grew up in the shadow of a lot of energy and mineral development on the Navajo Nation. So our reservation land's kind of been a energy colony for the United States for the better part of a century, whether that's coal or uranium. And oh, wow. Those legacies are still there. My grandfather was a uranium miner who's incredibly sick. They didn't give his folks, breathing protection, whatever. I lived next to, so anyways, he was sick most of my life. And then I grew up next to a coal power plant, oil and gas development. I developed asthma. And I just remember being a young man and super frustrated. And I said, I got to change this. And so went off, did the engineering thing, got a degree, got like sort of the training to learn how to work on that policy. And and then I basically, that's how I ended up with a PhD. So my PhD is on engineering and public policy. I focused on energy policy on the Navajo Nation. And I started working in academia and, part because it seemed like a good opportunity. There's very few and far between in terms of tenure track jobs. But, one of the things that I just really started seeing is that there's a real disconnect from how success is measured in the academy versus like what's actually impactful for my community. That in the academy, it's journal publications and grants. And okay. Given the timeframes in which you have to complete these and compared to, say, the length of time it takes to develop a relationship and a productive relationship in Native communities, it's kind of there's a really big disconnect. So it almost feels like I feel a little rushed to like do work that isn't extractive, in sort of partnership with communities. That takes a long time. And the pressures were kind of like, produce without little concern about the process and, the ways in which the academy and research has hurt our communities. And so I tried my best in that system to work towards that. But, I think the other challenge is that a lot of folks working in the academy, especially in universities like this, have no context or clue about Native communities. And so it was kind of falling on deaf ears a lot of the time. So I figured, no need to so I had that going on as a professor. And then, for the past 3 years as a professor, I've had my foot in the outdoor industry and that work there. And, that's been a space where I've felt like people have respected me for the things I bring to the table, feels it's a lot more healthy in terms of work-life balance. And I just,
I would definitely agree.
had the choice between the two, and I was like, life's too short to be unhappy. So I'm going to do what
Amen.
makes me happy, and, and it'll figure itself out. And the academy has a long way to go to figure itself out. It's got,
So
yeah.
I have one quick question for you. So you mentioned that like the academy has been detrimental to your communities. Can you kind of give me an example? Because, just playing the ignorant card here. I mean,
Totally.
I'm very aware of like education, government, things like that, big bodies, big business, whatever it has done to the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
But I am honestly extremely, and it's kind of, I feel embarrassed to admit this, but I'll say at the same time, I think this is probably more common than anything else. Like, I don't, outside of, the typical things that one would think that Hollywood and everything is, and you see on TV and the gram portrayed, like, what are ways that these organizations have damaged or attacked or continually attack your communities in ways that we don't see?
Yeah. I mean, I would say there's a lot of overlap between the Black experience with academia and the Native American. Like, it's very much a similar set of histories, whether that's, the Tuskegee experiments and that sort of thing. Like, those things happen to us. The other is like the prioritization of like what gets researched or what's deemed valid research. That's a big thing. And so like you see that sort of where resources are shifted are often not in the places where communities want or care, but maybe more of more importance to, say, the researcher. In the case of like state institutions, for example, like land grant institutions, most of land grant institutions' financial footing initially began with they were sort of parceled out these things called state trust lands. Like, these are lands that could be sold. But they all came from like violent indigenous dispossession. So a lot of state institutions, like their financial bedrock is, in the case of the Ivies, is like slavery.
Jesus.
In the case of the, like the Browns and the Harvards and that sort of thing, they were built by slaves and financed by the sale of slaves. And then in the West, it's a combination of a little bit of that financing that comes from those sorts of institutions, but also through the sale of trust lands and, dispossessed indigenous lands. But more recently, there's been, sort of this, the incentives within the institution are almost geared towards, it's all about the individual and what the individual produces. And, the timelines and how quickly you're expected to produce, it leads itself to actually very exploitative behaviors. And saying like, actually, I need a little bit more time to develop this relationship with this community before I can do work in partnership. But that means that you get set behind in your sort of promotion letter because you can't go through those processes. There's a few things there. But the one that comes to mind most recently, with kind of related to my communities, was the use of the genetic research. So there was actually not the University of Arizona, another state, Arizona State, back in the early 90s. There was a genetics researcher that was doing research, I believe, with the Hualapai tribe, was one of the tribes that lives in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And, they had partnered with the tribe, collected these DNA samples. They sat in a freezer. They, did this one study. Then they took those research samples out again and then began reprocessing them. And they were trying to like basically look at the genetic predisposition of folks to like behavior, like poor behavior, or not poor behavior, but like they were trying to look at the effects of like things like incest on like crime rates and alcoholism. And they were trying to like, it was very eugenic-y in the sort of what they were researching. And they didn't tell the community that's what they were doing. And they published this paper and basically tried to tie that the genetic link that, there was a higher level of intermarrying in this community than others. And this in part could explain, some of their current situation of being impoverished, high rates of alcoholism, blah, 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 but completely neglecting the fact that like they had been a colonized people. Right. And And so that paper was discovered by one of the tribal members, and she took it back to the tribe and said, "Hey, they're writing this stuff and like not having our consent," and it led to this whole uproar about human subjects research on native lands, and it's kind of rippled, and it's created a tense relationship. And unfortunately, as a native scholar within that, it's like I represent the institution, so like I can't really necessarily separate myself, even though I'm a part of the community.
Yeah, that's
so
complicated.
It is, yeah. So it's just it's an incredible place for liberation. Education can be, and it's an incredible tool for equity, but it's also within systems that are just have not been geared or rethought in sort of the history and legacies that they carry.
That's crazy. I mean, I would have never I mean, it makes sense. What you say makes sense when you look at the history of academia and you look at the history towards minority groups in the country as a whole. But on the reals though, like that's just kind of wild to me that like that would be put out in, and you said this all came out in the 90s or in the 80s?
In the 90s.
In the 90s?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what like when Tribe Called Quest was just like throwing it out. So like, jeez.
Yeah.
I was a teenager when that was out. That's wild to me.
Isn't
okay.
It? Yeah.
Oh,
and
man.
I look at it like, I look at, what are the opportunities for like our communities to educate ourselves, and like the powers of like the HBCUs and the tribal colleges, and like, I just like more and more, I'm like, man, that's such a system that we need to invest in and like put more time and energy to. And
can you explain what those are? Because I don't know what those are. What is the HBCU?
Historically Black colleges, universities, and colleges and universities. So.
Okay, then. Okay. Yeah. I was thinking it was along that line, but I was thinking this ties into Native American, but I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah. So like the Howards and stuff like that, or.
Okay.
And then, in the case of tribal colleges like Diné College or Sitting Bull College, there's a few, there's a lot like that too. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, dude, that's heavy. And so I want to like transition into a lot, but like we can go deep in that rabbit hole because like, in all honesty, like that's really what interests me. But like at the same time, for the sake of everyone listening to this, I know you guys want us to bounce around, and I love you, so we can bounce around a little bit. But so one thing I would like to do and follow up with that is, you mentioned, in academia, you're now leaving it. So are you still staying in your more, I guess, political or representation role? Are you still going to kind of dig in that? And I saw that you recently met the Secretary of Interior. That's awesome. Yeah. How's like all that going?
It's good. I think my role in the outdoor industry is the link between research, academia, and the outdoor industry is kind of weak. And I plan to continue that and like work on, generating thought and like kind of thinking about how the outdoor industry can be a force for good when it comes to things like climate change or environmental issues, environmental justice.
Okay.
So it's been, it's like super exciting and thinking about that. So like in my roles as I'm on the board for the American Alpine Club and then also the Honnold Foundation. But in those two roles, this topic about environmental justice and like, how do we think about these sorts of issues? Like I'm still working on research with, the American Alpine Club related to things like that. And it feels like there's, I think post-pandemic, we're going to be looking at, post-lockdowns. I don't know if COVID will ever go away, but, we're looking at a world in which a lot more people have gone outside. And
I would agree.
Yeah. And it's an exciting time. And I look at that and I'm like, wow, that's a huge opportunity.
One of my best friends, Clint, his brother-in-law works for an RV manufacturing place. And he's like, you are on a 2-year wait list to get what you want. Like, the cream of the creme and anything kind of like low ball, it's like a 9-month wait list. Like you just can't get anything because everyone is trying to go outside. Everyone is trying to travel locally. And so it's just an explosion. And then from owning a guiding company, I've seen now that people are starting to get a little bit more comfortable and they're okay. And in the guiding world, you can't not be close to people sometimes. But now it's kind of like, I'm watching the trickle turn into a little bit more of a kind of like, you turn your faucet on, it's almost a stream. And I foresee this happening. So I'm trying to get set up for it right now. But people are wanting to go outside more.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had the privilege. I didn't know you were on the board of the American Alpine Club. I just recently got asked to be on United Climb. So we're talking about the rhetoric where, whether a name is hurtful or is it just inappropriate, but basic concept around root names. And so it's been a very, very interesting conversation. We just did our first breakout a few days ago, and it's rad. So I'm happy to know that we're basically working on the same team. Air 5.
Yeah, there we go. That's awesome. Yeah, especially around the root naming stuff. Like that's that's such a complicated issue.
Is it really? I don't think it's that complicated.
Well, I mean, I guess in terms of like the vulgarity, but then it's like the question that I then ask is like, we're then talking about, naming features of lands that were stolen that Native peoples don't even have access to, or maybe there's sacred areas that tribes do, and it's naming a sacred thing. And it's like,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like,
so looking at it from that perspective, but to me, it doesn't seem that complicated because if you look at who was bolting.
Oh, totally.
I mean, if you just take a big step back and take a look all my beautiful white boys that I bolt with, you guys know that I love you. I think you're beautiful people and you guys are genuine and you talk to me about the things and you are the people furthering the way. So what I'm about to say does not apply to you. If you think this applies to you, then maybe you should check yourself. But if you look at the caliber of people that were bolting and the attitudes and the sexist behavior, and even then, and in the 70s, whenever this was going on, not even actually 80s, even in the mid 90s, but like it was always from what I remember, it was like Generation X. Mm-hmm. Then you have like your counterculture, then you have your hippies, and you have this, but there's always. It's only been now, and I jokingly say this to people all the time, like it's never been so good to be a black man in America, like ever until now. Yeah. Like I walk down the street with a cell phone and people are terrified of me. And it's like, it's this weird thing. But now when you look at this, like, so if you take that in consideration and take like the approach towards the dominant, like the majority in America, if you take their approach and how they view it, and now that they view that they're under attack, they view that they're the minority when they're still 70% of the population, let's just be honest. Like, we're 13%. Yeah. And you guys, I'm with you all the way because
we're 1.8.
Oh my God.
We need to work together, man. We almost got wiped out. No. Like that's the thing. But yeah, I hear.
Oh no, dude.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So
go for it.
So to me, it's not that complicated because if you look at the caliber of the human being that was putting the bolts in the wall, if you look at the caliber of the human being who felt that I don't even want to say that they felt like they belong there, they deserve to be there. It was just, it was this absent-mindedness. I can just go wherever I want to go. I don't even think it is. And then until it was finally challenged by people, until it was finally challenged by other people and what they're doing is challenged, then it's like, whoa, I've always been here. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it's you've never really asked permission or you've never really done this. And granted, the system is set up for you. So I have like this like teeny violin size, a little bit of empathy for that. Not in that little situation, can you see it? I'm playing it real small, but but to me, that's why it's like when we were having these conversations in the meetings, it just wasn't really surprising to me. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, what do you expect? Yeah. Like, if you look at the behavior of the people in authority, now the majority, I'm not, and once we get like dividing this up, like I don't believe all people are proud boy, white people. I don't believe all white people are proud boys. I don't believe all people are this thing, but people want to go along to get along, and most people will not stop bad behavior. So since you have never stopped that bad behavior, and there's only been a few people to step up, that bad behavior, it's just been perpetuated or allowed. And then even some people grow out of that bad behavior, but it's always been okay. So to me, I'm like, I don't understand why you guys are surprised. Like we need to start this from the bottom as they did. Like, we need more diverse people bolting. We need more diverse people out in out in these spaces. And I get that it's like, you know, rape train is a name of a route, slavery wall. You have all these things. I mean, we won't get into all of these things, but, you know, I get that it is terrifying. And I get that everyone's emotional state is very different. Like, I want to give a lot of respect to that, but just as we need white allies, we also need people to boldly go into these spaces and start just putting up stuff, establishing things, working with communities, and just make more of it and make more allies. And I guess that's how I've been like really thinking about this a lot, because this conversation comes up a lot. And I talked to a lot in a previous episode with Melissa too about this, but it's a complicated thing. And I never thought about it from your perspective. And it's just like, it's a whole nother level. It's like, you have the issue of like racist, horrible, you know, ethnic names. But then on top of that, it was your land to begin with.
We don't even have access to it anymore. But, you know, I think to your point, it's like, one of the things is like, I think about, it's like, it's the whole pipeline of like, how do we get people even to the point of like putting up, like having, for our communities, of having the internal capacity for us to like go out and have folks internally that bolt things. Cause like, you know, in terms of it, we're just not, like, I look at my community, we're not there yet. Like, we don't have enough, like I can count on my one hand how many Native folks I know could probably do that. And that's kind of where it's like, all right, we got to think about like, how do we sort of get kids interested in climbing, doing that sort of thing. And then also just like then taking it outside and being responsible users. And I mean, it's just that whole, I look at it as like a generational thing that we're looking at. And then I think for myself, it's also like, I think around the route naming, it's like, it's always, we're always a product of the people of our time in the moment, and like norms and values change over time.
I agree.
But what are the ways in which we can create sort of a lasting culture that can sort of cut through that and be a baseline, I guess? I don't know.
I get what you're saying. I think it's that. And then I want to throw a little random sidebar in there. I'm working on a project to help minorities and learn how to bolt and learn how to do that. So this is a conversation after the show, but I want to talk to you. I got something in the works. So, it's funny you bring that up, because people ask me why I like coaching so much. So my full-time job is I'm a rock climbing coach. I coach kids, adults, but primarily I manage about 125 kids a week. And, you know, people ask me like, why do you like it? One, children are rad. Adults are assholes. Kids are just, they don't know any better. And they're just like so happy to be there. So they bring that joy. Next, it's like, I feel like it is my absolute duty to continue to bestow the joy and the love for outdoors and things like this, and understand and have and make myself available for hard conversations when they need to come. And I coach majority Caucasian kids. Like, that's just, I mean, rock climbing is majority white sport. It's just kind of how it works. But I think that it's like, and it really like you, like when you were talking about like, you know, like introducing your kids into climbing and introducing the kids in your community, like that really like pulls in my heartstrings. And I think that's like where we start. I think that's like hands down. I think that's where we start. And I think that's where we prioritize the left hand, and the right hand, assuming that majority of the population is right-handed, the right hand is doing the fight, but the left hand is still educating. I guess is the only way I can think about it, because you've got to, I mean, you've got to make disciples. Like, you've got to make, you know, and you can call it indoctrinating, you can call it whatever you want. But like, if anyone is listening to this podcast and you like the spaces that you go out to, and you like the rock climbing gyms that you go to, those little penons that are sending your project right in front of you, they are the future of rock climbing. And so it is, if you are over the age of 21, it is your job to make sure that they understand that it is a privilege to do all of this, and they have a duty to kind of continue to make this space available for everyone they come across. And I don't know, that's how I look at it. And so I think, you know, Yeah, I'm kind of going on this
No,
weird
no,
rabbit trail with all of this. Yeah,
it's a capacity thing. I think back to the root naming or the root thinking and like the cut question around bolting. In the work in the research I've been doing, like there's a lot of conflict between tribes and climbers. I would say out of all recreation user groups, that's the biggest. There's the most flashpoint there. Some of the most significant issues.
Is it just because things are considered sacred? I mean, I guess I ask because like to me, it's like, why don't they have the same? Why don't you have the same? Like, why isn't it the same hot button with like mountain bikers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a few. There's a few factors at play. I think it's just historically you think about the culture of climbing and who is naming these routes. Like it's also that. I mean, that's a huge driver in like how people interacted. I think the other is climbing and mountain conquering has some very colonial roots. Totally. That's one. And then the other is that I think in some it's just such a foreign activity to a lot of tribes. But the other is that, the act of bolting in the eyes of some tribes is an irreparable damage. In my community, like my grandparents grew up near this place called Shiprock in northeastern. And that's been, oh my God, you want to talk about a hotbed of conflict. Like, the first ascent was in the 30s. Actually, some of the first use of glue and bolts, because there's not a lot of natural protection on that. So it was like the first use of glue and bolts within North America was on this. And, because they had to wrap down. I mean, it makes total sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So people were climbing, but what ended up happening is that it's kind of a gnarly route. I mean, it's a 2,000-foot volcanic plug, basically. And, people fell and died, and it's a sacred place to our tribe, and so people saw that as a contamination of the site. And what it's meant is that in 71, 72 there was basically a banning of all climbing on the reservation. So it's kind of like just sort of like that still stands today. And it's been this frustrating thing of like, I love climbing, I love doing these things. This is an opportunity for our kids to connect with the landscape, but we're kind of having to like work to undo all this shit that happened like 50 years ago.
Do you think it's more possible for your community and your tribe to be able to actually start climbing in that? I mean, like, screw me, I'm unimportant and anybody else outside of that, but like, do you think it's a possibility to get your community within your own community doing that, or is that just kind of like it's just a no across the board?
There's a lot of people that do. I climb. I mean, one of my climbing partner, Aaron, is Navajo too, and there's a lot of interest in a lot of folks. But I mean, I think like this well. It's like if you don't see people like yourself doing it, it just doesn't seem accessible. And I think that's been the
that's a very true statement.
It's a little bit of a chicken the egg, but I think like more like right now more than ever. I think to your point, like it's like more than ever, it's a good time, great time to be a Native American. Geez, like out of any point in history,
Yeah.
And I think about it, it's like, wow, it's like there's Native rock climbers, Black rock climber. I mean, we can just like there's a lot of folks that have talent out there, and I think just like what's happening now. I mean, I'm gonna make a mental note, but 20 years from now, it's gonna be like, what's it gonna look like? It's gonna definitely be better.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Because I mean, I'm already seeing it now. Like I have, there's a few, I was talking to, so my number 2 at my job, Amanda Martyr, it's like, whatever side of the brain is more organized, that's her. And then I'm the rest of it, and we were talking about it, and, she's Asian, and what is it? And we were talking about like, I walked up to her and I was like, it was such an odd question. And we definitely had to talk about this in private, but I was like, how do you feel about having our first set of African-American kids in our classes? And she was like, I didn't know how to feel about it at first. I'm excited, but she's like, but I'm hoping this trickle continues and hoping this diversifies and hoping that we start having just like, the phrase that I like to say all the time is I want to see the world on our walls. I want to see the whole world on our walls. And for a long time, it's been the 70, not the world. And it's starting to change. I kind of like to flip gears here because as everyone knows, I follow you. Actually, that's so funny. I was thinking about it. And when you announced that you were leaving academia, I was like, oh, so he's going to become a professional memer because he's just killing the game. That's what I thought you were going to do. Like, legit. I was like, he could make money doing this. Why not? I mean, okay. Yeah. I was about to say the fat Jew makes a ton of money doing this. So I'm like, that's it. My homeboy. Yeah. That's it. But I really would like to dive into your aspirations cinematically. I've really watched some of the stuff you've come out with. I'm really like impressed with it. The quality is amazing. You're doing things that I wish I would just like shake off the fear that I have of putting my content out sometimes and just like throw it out there and do it. But are you trying to go somewhere with this, or is it just kind of like a passion project whenever it happens?
Yeah, I think that's like you're picking it up on, part of what. So I do have to address the memes, and I will. I started Natives Outdoors, our company, 3 years ago as an Instagram account, and then it slowly evolved into doing apparel. And then we started saying, oh, there's an opportunity in media, there's opportunity in consulting, and we're doing our business planning and kind of figuring out where's our opportunities. But, one of the things that we dived into was film and storytelling. And just given our time and given how people are getting information, learning about things, it's through social media, it's through media generally. People aren't reading journal articles. And I saw this, like one of my films, Welcome to Gwich'ya'ji, led to a testimony in front of Congress. So you saw me body Paul Gosar in a recent post, known white supremacist. Let's put that out there. That was a point at which I saw there's a lot of power in this tool. And I think one of the things I saw was that my training in sort of understanding my part of my doctorate was looking at the roles in which cultural values influence people's perception of risk, preferences around environmental issues. And I said, there's a way I can connect that research and what I'm doing there to the stories that are being told, because when we're outside, our bodies are the hardware moving through the mountains, but our software is our culture. And how we perceive others in our group, how we perceive the environment, how we take in information. I said, this is a really place that has a lot of interesting stories to tell. And one of the things that I really saw as important is like the vehicle in which we can explore sort of the inner workings of ourselves is through these films. And so Gwich'ya'ji, which I'll send along to you, but it's a 14-minute film about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and the Gwich'in people's fight to protect it. We actually never shot a single section of the film in the Arctic Refuge because, as much as important as it is, we really wanted to show people, the Gwich'in people's cultural relationship to the landscape, because then it would totally make sense why they would care about this place, wherever it may be. But when I, at least in the other films, the other part of it is that's the sort of storytelling. I got some other goofy stuff going on, but I think I
definitely want to hear about those.
I'm working on a climate change film right now. Like a short, dumb film about climate change. It's not dumb. Well, it is dumb, but you'll see why. But basically, there's all this talk about going to Mars, right? And it does snow on Mars, believe it or not. There is Mars snow.
Oh, it does. I watched The Red Planet. I mean, secretly, I just hope like one of my friends was like, if you could do anything, the dumbest thing, what would you do? I was like, cryogenically freeze me, terraform Mars, and then let me bolt.
It might take a while.
I'm cryogenically frozen. It's tomorrow, so I'm not really concerned.
Gravity is 38% of what it is here on Earth, so like you can do some hard stuff.
Oh, dude, 517C coming your way.
So we're making this film about the highest peak on Mars is Olympus Mons. It's like 69,000 feet or something like that. It's massive.
It's massive. It goes into the stratosphere.
So the story is,
like I recently read some. Go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
No.
I cut you off. My bad. No, I recently read something. They were talking about like it's so big that you would not realize that you're standing at the foothills. Like it's so massive. And I was like looking at a picture on. Do you follow? It's one of the subsidiaries of NASA, but they post all these photos on Instagram.
Yeah.
And they posted this mountain, and they're like, that mountain is so big, you would not were standing at the foothills. And I'm like, whatever, and then I started looking, and then I pulled out like one of my, like a topo, a map, and I was like, this is what and then I started looking at an Instagram photo. I was like, okay, oh damn. And that thing was all the way over there. I'm like, that thing is the size of like maybe 6 of Texas put together.
It is.
It's massive. That's just the footprint.
So we're making a film about this whole process, about what it would take to go put the first ski or snowboard descent on Olympus Mons. and so we're going to talk with Jeremy Jones, snowboarder, owner, about how he would design a board for Mars. And then the funniest thing that happened today is I got put in contact with a former astronaut. And so we're just going to talk, like semi-seriously talk to him about like what it would take to shred Mars, or, like space travel and all of that. But it's a 5-minute film. It's going to be completely a joke. But the point being is that like, it takes so much less energy to protect our home planet than to try to go shred on Mars.
Oh, wow. Well played. So, I like this.
Yeah, but that's the premise.
I would like to back. Oh, go ahead. I just want to back up on something you said that like really resonated with me earlier. You said a comment that was like just super powerful. Our bodies are the hardware, our minds are the software. And I think that's just really because I just had to like update a bunch of my software on my computer, and I like sat here for like 40 minutes and I was like, and I don't know why, but I just connected that with that feeling of me waiting for my computer to update with the feeling of the update of people and the update of the changing of the environments and the changing of that and the changing of the landscape. It's just like everyone hates it. Like everyone hates it when their phone auto updates. They love it at the end. We all love the cool little bells and whistles, but all of us get pissed because it always happens at the most unopportune time. And so, I mean, for people who don't want social justice, people who don't want to see the page, it's like it's always happening to them at the most unopportune time. I don't know why. I just wanted to like bring that back because I thought that was like very like harmonious. It was beautiful.
And culture change is hard.
It was fabulous.
That's the hard thing is like changing. Like it's so hard to change ourselves. And I always remember it's like people won't change unless they want to. So what's the sort of incentives to like kind of push people like up the hill or down the hill, whatever, but yeah, I mean, I guess, in that way, that's kind of where I get to talk about the memes now. In in native culture, in like a lot of native cultures, I wouldn't say all, but like mine, Navajo specifically, like humor is a tool that we use in very serious situations, or when times would like, you'll go to a meeting, you're talking about something really hard or whatever, and people like will crack a joke or laugh, because if things get too serious, it's too hard to actually talk about the hard stuff. And I mean, that's a lot of cultures. That's not native cultures. I would just,
No, I mean, I've done that. I've talked about it in terms when I've been in like in Arkansas or Alabama. And, I've talked about when I've met people who walk up to me and they're like, well, boy, what are you doing out here? And I'm always just like, oh, Oh, I'm a grown ass man. I'm sorry. I didn't see that. And they'll find it funny and they'll chuckle or I'll
Yeah.
break it off or, pull the classic Dave Chappelle, just, the black racist and just go full on like crazy on them. But like, I've definitely done that. Like, and humor is the way that you diffuse the racist. Humor is the way that you diffuse people who humor is how you diffuse a situation from a person who believes that they are in a point of power. They believe that they deserve to be in a state of power. And I think that's universal across the board because I've talked to my friends who are Asian and they talk about, the perfect minority. Same thing. They play into the stereotype and play into the jokes and play into that to diffuse the situation. Because every once in a while, like,
survival,
that's
dude.
Just, it's what you got to do for your own peace of mind. Even if the situation really isn't that bad, even if it's like all your homies, all your friends, every once in a while, you just kind of like, I don't know how to say it, but like, every once in a while you have to play one of those cards just to kind of get a litmus test on the room. And you're just like, you're kind of like, okay, everybody's cool here. They laughed at the joke. And then there's that one person who maybe didn't really laugh at the joke, but they're snickering at it. But then they're looking at you and like, not letting you belay me, homeboy. You out.
I mean, that's the,
you out.
I said, I mean, that's kind of the tool during this time, like during the COVID times, because like we're all on our phones, like we're just consuming media of all sorts. And, it's like
day.
there's a lot of hard shit going on in addition to the pandemic with all the like hate crimes recently against Asian folks. And like, I mean, we can go so crazy,
that shit's wild.
And I think like people, I have strong opinions on all that stuff, but I think sometimes it's like, I will put those out there when it matters. And when I think it's important, but if other times it's like, I think there's other points at which I'm just like, let's kind of try to find some humor in the absurdity of the time that we're in, but also try to build cohesion through that and then talk about the hard stuff. And, that's been the funny thing is like, I've gained all these followers during the pandemic and it's been all because of the memes. And it's like, well, like once people can go outside again, it might be different, but
I mean, I think you're killing it. So I'm going to admit something. You are one of the few people that I have all notifications turned on.
Mario, that's an honor. I think you're the first person to mention that. Oh, I'm going to put that on my resume now.
Oh, no. Because I'm not going to lie, man. Some of your shit is straight fire. It's never bad. Like, just shoot straight from the hip. Some of it's like, okay, that's clever. That's witty. And sometimes I'm like, oh, damn, you need to hurt nobody's feelings. God damn. But thank you. Thank you so much. So, yeah. Yours, like, there's like maybe 5 people. Now, honestly, I will say there are 10, maybe 10 people that I have out of everyone that I follow that I have full notifications on. But yours is definitely one of them.
I need to create a Substack now, I think. I'll just and do these FTP sales of memes or whatever. I'm just learning about what these are. I'm kidding.
Nice.
I'm not going to do this, but...
No, I'm waiting for you to create like everyone has that like your friends group, the green circle. And so if you ever want to invite a brother into the green circle,
I don't post in it very much though.
Oh, see, that's where I say shit that like, so everyone in sticker. So hold on. I'm gonna go ahead and say this right now. Sticker club members, y'all are in the green circle for Sins and Suffers, but you got to holler at me directly to be in the green circle of the other one because that's where I play angry black man. So but we're gonna move on from that one.
The meme thing I mentioned, I got paid. I did some work for Fat Tire at the end of last year for some of their memes. They did a series where they were taking, because Fat Tire is the first carbon neutral certified beer. So basically they offset all of the carbon in making the beer.
wow.
It's first in the world. It's really awesome. And, they announced this, and part of their campaign was talking about how, by the end of century 2100, beer, a 6-pack could cost $100 in today's money because of water shortages, because of crop failures, blah, you name it. And they said it doesn't have to be that way. And the way that we get there is by reducing our carbon emissions. And so, but in making that announcement, there's, all of the Goonies came out of the woodwork and, started, leaving their thoughts in the comments. And so they said, hey, here's a really savage way of doing some marketing. They screenshotted the comments and then started making them into memes and then putting some witty responses to them. And so part of my job was to do some of that. It was just we crossed out people's handles and stuff, but their words are out there and we get to
I'm going to go ahead and bestow the certified hustler degree on you because you are like a modern day hustler. We will not get into the stories of me hustling as a child because I did some shit that I'm sure some people back from my old days are listening to this, and y'all know what I did in middle school and high school. Yeah. So we're going to leave that alone. But modern day hustler.
I take that honor again on the resume again.
Oh my God. That's freaking awesome.
So it's been,
oh my God. Yeah, I'm excited. You're the first person I've ever talked to that's actually gotten paid to do memes. So, I mean, let's flip this around. Honor is mine.
I look at, the one account, I was like, I kind of said, there's got to be money in this. Is that one account, Daquan, sold for $85 million a few years ago. No.
Are you kidding me?
The whole thing.
The account, the whole thing.
Sold the account. So there's money in memes and it's nuts.
I'm in the wrong business.
The meme game, man, it's hot right now.
The meme game is hot. I'm going to go ahead and say, let's just be honest. You're a brilliant dude. I feel like to get quality memes, you have to put some thought and some effort because I've definitely seen a couple of them. I'm like, all right, this is pretty weak. And I feel like majority of them are weak. But the memes that you always know it's good when you chuckle at the meme, but then you're like, yeah, oh, this is fun. And you're like, wait a minute. You have to go back and read it 2 or 3 times, look at the picture. You're like, oh, you mother. Those are the best, and I feel like you deliver those pretty well. I gotta
say, one of the joys of my life is I follow Black Twitter, a lot of Black Twitter, because it's just there's fire in that scene. It's so much.
I don't tweet at all, but I do follow.
I think the one that I saw recently that I think I died there's a photo of Kamala Harris on the phone, kind of smiling, in running outfits, and it said something to the effect of "Hey Joe, I'm broke again." She spent her stimmy. I just had to put down the phone for a day. I was just like, oh my God.
Oh shit. Oh my God.
But yeah, I don't know. The humor is God. I mean, it's it's a tool for coping, man.
Yeah.
Our communities, both of our communities use humor for that purpose.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's funny. Actually, we're talking about this. The movie that pops into my mind is Blazing Saddle.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen that? That's classic. Classic. Anyone who hasn't seen this, and if you're listening to this podcast, stop the podcast. I don't care if you're at work, turn on Blazing Saddle, watch the whole thing. It's on Netflix. It's on Hulu. And it's probably, you can, if Napster is still a thing, do that. But it is an amazing movie, and it's funny. I just I see that because there was both of those cultures were portrayed in that movie, and if I remember that correctly, but I don't know why.
I mean, that's a movie that could not be made today.
In talking about, Oh, it could be made today. People would be outraged, but then the rest of us would be laughing. It's almost like the Tiger King. Like everyone who watched the Tiger King was like, this is a terrible, terrible thing, but you can't stop watching it. If Blazing Saddle was made today, people would be like, this is so wrong. And I would look at, and this would be me in the room. Everyone would be like, it's such a terrible movie. I'm like, but all of y'all have watched it. And I'm just looking around the room and everyone's just like, heads go down. I'm like, you might hate it, but you all watched it. Talking about movies and things, we have a mutual friend, obviously.
We do, yeah.
We have a bunch of mutual friends, but I was super sad that I didn't get the opportunity to hang out with you in Moab with Q. And I was just kind of curious, like, how did you two link up? Because, I only found out the greatness of Q and what Q is. And for those of you who are listening, I am not talking about Quantum Leap. I am talking about an actual human person. I just dated myself there.
It is a jam.
Which Quantum Leap is a jam. Let's just be honest. Like that.
It was. Yeah, Q
it was
and
a good
I met,
show.
I think in Jackson, again, mutual friends. And then just all the lead up to the stuff around Bears Ears. Q spends a lot of time in that part of the world, and I grew up there in that area, and just like the whole advocacy around protecting Bears Ears and that monument was how we linked up, and like everyone else in like kind of the outdoor space. Like that's kind of how it was just like that was the moment in which I had my in and like kind of created the opportunity.
So someone looking from the outside, Bears Ears was a big deal, but it seems like quite a few people got really linked in, and there was a lot of it seems to me the whole Bears Ears thing was a springboard, because from that it seemed like it catapulted a lot of people into the industry of activism. It catapulted a lot of people into that. And so it seemed like there was a lot of major players in that whole thing. Well, I don't want to use the term major players. I want to say like, in order to protect the things that you love, people united. And it seemed like a lot of that happened. And so a question I would like to ask is there anything that happened with that is still happening that is probably not commonly known that people should still care about?
Yeah, I mean, the monument's probably coming back, most likely. I don't know, it might be a bit different, but it was the first time tribes in this country are like, we kind of fall into this weird thing called domestic dependent nations, but we have this unique relationship with the federal government because we're kind of like citizens of two nations. So we're like both, we have a legal and political identity in addition to a racial one. And like plays out in a lot of different ways. It is complicated. I won't go too deep down that rabbit hole. But one of the things that when it comes to tribes is that by law, we have a seat at the table because, our interests are front and center in a lot of these landscapes. We're consulted with, but doesn't mean necessarily our issues are addressed adequately. But Bears Ears was significant because tribes recognizing that power said, hey, we're going to lobby Obama to use the Antiquities Act, which is, an act that, sorry, my dogs are barking. They are.
No, it's okay. They're trying to get into the show. It's fabulous.
Basically the president can act unilaterally to protect landscapes. He can do these things by creating national monuments. And the tribe said, hey, here's an opportunity for us to protect this large swath of land, about 2 million acres, that has been basically looted for the past century by Mormon settlers for artifacts. And so this will give protection, blah, blah, blah. Created, it happened. But, one of the things that was really critical in that is that Sally Jewell, awesome lady, in addition to everything else she's done, basically told the tribes and the Intertribal Coalition, if you want this to stick, if you want this to be a national monument, you got to get a wider swath of constituents to like buy into this. And the easiest one was climbers, outdoor rec community. And so those linkages started getting built. And so I came into that, kind of right as it was happening, sort of like, in the conversations that were happening. I was coming in on the outdoor industry side. I was kind of familiar with the stuff happening on the tribal side, but when that monument got reduced, all that stuff happened around it. These existing partnerships and linkages just got supercharged, and sort of like solidified. And so, I look at the folks that I've been really fortunate to like continue to work with through then. We've gone on and done other things, and and just the amount of Native people within the industry, it's just been nuts, to see how much that's just exploded. It's really grown.
Oh yeah, it's grown. It's grown. It's grown. Yeah. I was talking to, James, who wrote, his name is escaping me,
James,
but he wrote The Adventure
James,
Gap.
Mills.
Yeah. So I remember the first time I went to OR, he was the only other brother that I saw there. And I walked OR every day. And I went even to, I even went to the food. What was it? There was a section of it where, I walked around the textiles section where there's no one there. It's all just companies from Asia. It's selling textiles. And there's like one dude who speaks English. And I was just like walking around trying to find one other brother. And I randomly ran into James, and we were like, ooh, like we saw each other. And then he gave me a book of The Adventure Gap, signed it, and he was like, read this book. And I was like, okay. And so I read it immediately. And then the next year, the only other brother I met was Darren Josie, a good friend of mine who used to work for Polar Tech. Oh, you know Darren?
Yeah.
Oh, Darren's money people. And now he works for Eno. And, and then from that moment on, it just exploded. And then I was talking about this to someone else. It's like, it was, I wish I remember the year it was, but it was like, I want to say the year I met James, OR was in Salt Lake for 4 more years. 4 more years, 4 or 5 more years, I want to say. I definitely think it was 4. It was 4 more years OR was in Salt Lake, because it was 1 year I didn't go because of financial situations. But, and then, no, it was 5 years. It was 5 more years, because I went for a total of 4 times. And I remember every year I went, it wasn't until like year 4 that all of a sudden it exploded. And there were so many more people there. It would just blew my mind. And that was actually the first time, I want to say the year after that was the first time I actually saw you walking around there. And that was the first time I saw you. That was the first time I had seen quite a few people actually walking around there. And it was wild. It was just like so interesting to me, because I was just like kind of taken aback. Like I was a little like flabbergasted, because I was like, there are minorities here. I don't know what to do. Like, do I put on my very civil voice, or do I just like, just go in like me, like East Coast slang, And I didn't really know. And it was but it was a very, 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 very beautiful thing. But yeah, I mean, I remember attending OR for, almost the better part of 6 years, and guaranteeing James and Darren were the only 2 people that I expected to run into. And occasionally there was another brother touring the event. But for the most part, like I would never see them the next year.
I do remember like Salt Lake being really that way. You probably didn't see me, because I just like was like, all right, I'm going to dip out of here. It was crazy. Yeah, I remember that.
I don't blame you. I went to Maple Canyon very quickly after every day. So
I mean, it's definitely a different. I mean, it's a different space for sure. And I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see into the future, but I'm kind of like, if this is the trajectory, it's going to be awesome.
Oh, I think it's going to be so great. I think the next time, honestly, if anybody's listening to this that works from OR, like, I think the level of bromance and bromance is going to be next level. Like people, like I'm expecting a lot of tears at the next OR because people are going to be so happy to congregate, because my favorite part of OR is just walking up to the random booths that of like, I go to like the Tiger Ball booth, which is like these therapeutic balls where you can like, work out your muscles and all that. But I go to that booth every year and I see probably there's only a few people that I've seen that stuck around. But I always have these like random little side conversations, and I write notes about like what they've been doing and seeing what they do, what's going on with them. And I think I'm expecting there's going to be a lot of crying going on because people are going to just be so happy to actually see people and just like, I haven't seen you and I don't remember your name. And I'm just happy to see you.
Yeah, it's like, I miss the swag, man. I miss the free swag.
I miss what is it? Clean canteens.
I miss
that's a good question. What do you miss most from OR? I miss I want to say, I can't remember if it's Clean Canteen or the company that makes those like orthotic insoles that go into your shoes. I can't remember. It's either Clean Canteen, that company. Yeah, Superfoot. But one of them used to make Bloody Marys every morning in line every day. First thing, I would not miss that. I would get a Bloody Mary. I would mix in some extra BC powder. Yeah. So I could just like be on my A game.
Oh man, it does. I remember that. You're right. I mean, it's like kind of just seeing people, and I think one of the jokes that I've been making in one of my group chats is the "let's collaborate" line, because it's like at OR, it's like everything is about saving the world, and like we're all kind of like being excited and imaginary, and when I'm hitting up some of my friends about like some work projects and stuff, I'm like, hey, let's collaborate, man, just to like, because we miss OR, we miss it, just like
I like that. Oh no, I do. I mean, I think that's the thing I miss. I want to ask you kind of 3 more questions here, and then I kind of want to give you an opportunity to do a shout out or kind of mention anything, a PSA or anything like that. But one thing for me that I have recently been in a bunch of talks, and I really like that this is said, but a lot of times I don't know where to find the information, and I'm just going to assume that I'm like every other American in the world. People always ask me, they're like, give your pronouns and what native lands are you on? I'm like, like, where would you recommend that someone go to find the native lands that they are existing on? So so they know and they can educate themselves.
Yeah, I mean there's native-lands.ca. I poke so much fun at the land acknowledgement. It's just like I'm one of the few people that can do that. But I mean, it's just kind of
go with it, man.
I always kind of say it's like I acknowledge this car belongs to the Lakota Nation, and then I drive off. I just, it's like, I think it's an important tool. It is an important tool, but I think in it, it's just like, we have to recognize its limitations. And one of them is like raising the sort of invisibility of Native peoples and a lot of issues in our country, elevating that, which I think is really important. And I understand that intention, but I think in doing so, it's like, I think then we're at the point now where I think we can begin shifting the conversation. And so a lot of my sort of poking fun at the land acknowledgement is to saying like now
shifting it to what?
Tribes being a legal political institution that were native, your nations, like all of our public lands are native lands. And it's like, now we have a Secretary of Interior that's native. And I think saying like the lands that we're on, like, can we start thinking about repatriation of lands? Can we start thinking about, taking
That's heavy. I mean, what would that actually look like, though? Because you're talking about repatriation of land.
I should say the repatriation is a spectrum, but
I mean,
but yeah.
Okay, yeah. This is okay. We'll get into.
Yeah, totally.
You're going to be a guest again, and then we're going to get into that.
I will give a quick highlight. One of the things that happens in a lot of countries is like Bears Ears was going to be a co-managed federal unit that would have equal voting power and management status from the tribes and the federal government. And I think that's sort of a sustainable model that we can move to. Is just Native people. So that's what I'm saying in like terms of like,
okay,
we can then
sense.
Talk about that. We can then let's move to that now. And then actually interesting thing about the pronouns is that one of the things is in Navajo culture, we actually have 4 genders. We have 2 gender identities for male, female, obviously, and then folks that, identify in different ways as transgender. 4. In the pronouns thing, like that's kind of a hard thing for me sometimes because it almost feels like we're ascribing a set of cultural values that I don't come from, but I feel like the culture I come from can help address this as well. And I don't want to lose that because we've had that for centuries or not centuries, we've had that since our inception, and it's like a part of our culture.
Yeah. That's really, I once again, next episode, I want to dive into that because that's very interesting to me because I know I have a lot of friends that struggle with that and understanding that. And I think understanding and hearing it from a culture that has had that for centuries, I think it would be a very good eye-opening thing. Okay.
Mental note.
Okay.
No, mental note. We'll just take another question on
this. Go ahead. Okay. So another question I want to ask you is, what are the top fights? Like let's just pick 2 things. Like, what are 2 things that you're involved in that people can help you with, whether it's monetarily, whether it's just like reposting your memes all day, whether it's whatever, but like, what are 2 things that people can do, or what are 2 fights or 2 things that you're involved in that are important to you? And then I'm just going to throw out the last question is, and this is a question I like to ask everybody, is for education. Like, what are books that you have gifted or that you would recommend that we buy and then just dive into? And if you've got an entire library, just hit me with it.
First question, with Natives Outdoors, we're actually gonna start a Kickstarter here in the next few months to like raise some funds to finish some of these film projects. It's always as you well are aware, it's always a struggle of hustle. It's expensive, and it's expensive. Camera equipment's expensive, and it's a major barrier. And so we're going to do that. That's a big thing. But it's investing in Native storytellers that we work with and are incredibly talented. And basically the gap has been money. So that's one. The other is just, I've been covering a lot around Deb Haaland's nomination and what that means. And, it was true of, I don't know how much you paid attention to like some of the nominations of secretary cabinet officials and stuff like that, but the women of color and like people of color got like just totally reamed by Senate Republicans and just like totally racist double standards and stuff. And I think what we're going to see is a lot more sort of, I like to call it harassment, by members of Congress of these folks and agencies that are trying to do good things. And and part of that is just like with Deb Haaland and just celebrating the other cabinet members, because now we have like the most diverse presidential cabinet of any point in history. You go down all, it's just like, that's something that we gotta like, I really think it's like the next 2 to 4 years, we really gotta just, make those people feel like they have the support that they need to do their job, because they're just going to receive so much shit. Yeah. And as for books, down on there's a reading list on Natives Outdoors that we put together kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, because we knew people were going to be inside. But I would say there's 2 books that I've read recently. One that I always recommend is if you spend time on public lands, a good one to read is Dispossessing the Wilderness by Mark David Spence. It's the history of national parks and the creation of the reservation system and how the two had to coincide. Really interesting. And then the other book that I read this past year that was just totally eye-opening was this one called The Other Slavery. And it's a story about indigenous slavery and slavery, basically indigenous people enslaving each other, indigenous people being enslaved, that was occurring in this continent all the way up until the 1900s. In places like Mexico. And it was eye-opening, but also just sort of the complexity. And then there's another one called Blurring the Color Lines, I believe, but it's a story of Black and indigenous people and like sort of the intersections of indigenous and Black people within the Americas. And so those have been 3 books that I read in this past year that have just been really enlightening. And just also just make history like so complex, and just like it. And yeah, it's just, I think in sort of having that view, it's like, wow, it's like amazing that we're even at the point that we're at now. So I'll send that along, that reading list, and I will.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being here. This has been a joy. I'm not going to lie. This is probably one of the podcasts that I've been like most excited to do ever. All my other guests, previous guests and guests to come, y'all are fabulous. Yeah. Y'all are beautiful, but like this is bromance. So y'all just need to calm yourselves down. But yeah, well, is there just before we go, and I know your dogs are giving out a PSA here real quick. Is there anything that anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Check out Natives Outdoors and our homies there. It's like, I'm one person, but I have a whole team of folks that are doing awesome stuff. And yeah, they're all there. So yeah, shout out to all of them for actually being my meme feed. I'm going to be quite honest. There's a couple group chats I have that I'm not going to take all the credit for my memes. They definitely feed a lot of them to me. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I want to say that the sticker that was made was by my homegirl, Tessa Rappa. Check her out at tar_art_ on the gram. She is an amazing artist from Dallas, based out of New York. And if you're not a member of the sticker club, there's so much stuff that you can get. Stickers in the month every mail, love letters for me, a chance to win gear from tension climbing, beyond clothing, organic climbing. There's a monthly raffle, and I want you guys to be a part of it. $5 a month. Outside of that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Len is amazing. Go find him online, laugh at his memes, share them, cry. Live your best life. But as always, if you're not suffering, are you really sending at all?